So one of the major conspiracies that's always being peddled by, I think we all know who the channels are. I don't even have to say them, but I'm going to focus on RK Outpost just as a kind of symbolic of a lot of these channels. Keep going on and on about this kind of shill MCU conspiracy and how the Eternals would have, but clearly it's not, would have been approved of these supposed critics. And so they admit, yes, they were wrong because according to them, Marvel, being part of this woke, gay, communist, whatever the thing is, would never ever be attacked by critics. But Eternals clearly is being dismissed by a lot of critics. So they're clearly wrong. So they admit they're partly wrong, but they still have to believe in the conspiracy. So we're going to see RK try to get out of this by finessing the position.
And I gotta admit, I didn't think that this would happen. I did not think that we would be sitting here a few days before the release of Marvel's Eternals, a movie that was specifically made to pander to woke critics, a movie that has been promoted with nothing but diversity and representation and inclusion. I did not think that even the woke critics were going to reject this thing. A 56% now on Rotten Tomatoes from the very people that this movie was made for, because it obviously wasn't made for fans. No one was asking for the types of things that they are doing in Marvel's Eternals.
I guess the way we're going to try to maintain consistency within this weird cult, really, that's what it's coming down to, is that, okay, this film was made for these woke critics, therefore something has gone wrong because it can't be made for the fans. It was made for the woke people. Therefore, there is an irony here. Well, the problem with that, of course, would be that I guess if we go along with this, if you're bisexual, leftist, or whatever, a feminist, then you would like Eternals. So therefore, if we follow this reasoning, as ridiculous as it is, it's all about politics. So if you have the right kind of politics, you're going to like this. But the problem with that is there are a lot of so-called woke people who don't like MCU movies. They don't like superhero movies. They don't like any comic book movies. They don't like a lot of these fantasy films. They're very, very hostile to them, period. But nevertheless, even they overall have been nicer to other MCU films. But again, Eternals just isn't working for them. So the problem here would be not that there aren't shills. Clearly there are a few. And it's not that there are not critics with some political bias. There are a few of those, but the conspiracy theory just doesn't seem that there really is a conspiracy. So in terms of them grifting that they're exposing a conspiracy, you're not really exposing anything. But let's provide some evidence. So I'm going to quote Mark Kermode, who is notorious for hating Marvel films, for hating comic book films. He hates Michael Bay. He really loves Christopher Nolan. And I mean, love. I mean, one of his quotes says literally, I love Christopher Nolan. So he's not been a big fan of the whole trend of comic book films. And he's very much on the left. He says this very constantly. He judges films a lot if they're, quote unquote, not feminist enough or not inclusive enough. And he states that he did like a lot of those aspects in Eternals. He really liked that it was inclusive and multicultural, etc., etc. But he's very severe on the film. He just did not like it. And he's going to detail why he didn't like it.
Those things are actually the thing about the film that's interesting and good. Everything else is the problem. And I want to be very clear that the problem with the film is that the film is mechanical and dull and boring. It's not mechanical and dull and boring because it's a film that's trying to be inclusive or forward-looking. That's a plus point. That's a point of entry. That's an interesting thing to be doing. But it just feels like, are we not all tired of this universe now? Have we? I mean, I know that it's a really old man thing to say, enough. You wiped out half the world or half the universe, however many movies ago it is. I just don't know that I can get emotionally invested anymore. And I certainly can't get emotionally invested when there are umpty-thrumpty characters with umpty-thrumpty locations and bits and stuff and all the thing. And then it's just a series of special effects sequences interspersed by some nice little dialogue moments and some moments of humour with some, good characterizations. That bit that we played just then is quite funny. And me thinking, if you'd made this whole film about Barry Keoghan, for example, if you'd made this whole film about Kamal Nanjiani, maybe that would have been a way in. But it gives me no pleasure at all to say it's boring.
Some critics clearly didn't like Eternals, but there's no wider conspiracy. they just didn't like the film. My own judgment on the film, I think people are exaggerating how bad it is. I've already done a non-spoiler review. I'll link that. It's going to be in the description. I would give it a 6.8. I think if it's a 7 out of 10, that's being a little too generous, but it's not horrifyingly bad. It's just, it was disappointing, but I expected it to be a lot worse from the critics' score. It's fine. It's just overall kind of a little above average, the MCU stuff, but that's about it. But as he says, he doesn't really like these films at all. He wants them to stop. He wants it all to stop. So I gotta ask RK Outpost how this is gonna work. Why would he deny himself shill paychecks if he's saying for the MCU to stop? He says, I don't want any more. I don't want any more of these superhero films. I don't want any more of this stuff. How does that work with the shill communist gay conspiracy? I'd like an answer on that one. But I don't think I ever will get an answer. I'll just get a reformulation of the conspiracy saying, oh, okay, a few of the gay communists aren't obeying Kevin Feige, but, most of the gay communists, they're taking orders from MCU and the Disney and the Rian Johnson and The Last Jedi. Yeah, let me just end with that one. Mark Kermode likes The Last Jedi. He was critical of it, but he does like The Last Jedi, so it may make their heads explode. Some people like The Last Jedi, don't like Eternals. I guess I'm a little bit more consistency. I like both of them, though I think The Last Jedi is a lot better, but again, I'm just a generous person. I guess that's where I stand. All right, but so far this gay shill conspiracy is once again not working, but gotta find a way to make it work for the grift, I guess.